Well, hello. Recently, Brackenfell High School has uh, been accused of alleged racism due to a white matric ball. So now there's a lot of things going on here. Since inherently this circulated on social media, the event was recorded by a an institution, and this institution got a lot of attention. A lot of people noticed that due to the matric bonds, there were very few white people, and many people came out saying that there was at least some element of racism there. But before we continue on that, let's just explain a few basic things. Okay. The EFF got word that Brackenfell High School, the matric dance, was a white-only event, and that they came to protest. They gave a very short notice that they were going to protest, and then when they came, violence ensued, and a clash happened. You can see from a lot of these videos that a lot of things happened. The police got involved, a lot of tensions got higher and higher, punching happened, and even some guns were shot. Not actual guns, but um, air guns, pellet guns, things like that were shot. And it got to such an extent where the premier of Cape Town got involved. And even President Ramaphosa got involved and commented on the issue. This is something that escalated extremely quickly. Now, again, for this entire thing, what should you know? What, as you, the observer of this commotion, should understand? What's happening? Is this true? Is there actual racism happening in Brackenfell High School? Is the Matrica all actually racist in nature? Is it not? Is it the EFF just going about again, as they've done multiple times in the past, by just shouting out white people are bad, they're destroying the country? Are they just doing that again, or is there some legitimate foundations that there is there? And this is what we're going to discuss. So we first have to discuss the action that is being taken. Is the matric ball actually racial in nature? Are they excluding people, black, coloreds, specifically out of this event? So we'll see. The Daily Voice has been in contact with some of the school members and has found out that something very interesting. As you can see here, a Michelin of color told the Daily Voice they were not included in this private chat group. We have a class WhatsApp groups where information is usually shared, but it was not the case on the event, which clearly showed they weren't meant to be excluded. So this at least suggests that this private WhatsApp group was made specifically to exclude colors and blacks. Now, some may argue that what if they just were including their friends, saying that, oh, I just want I'm just making this for my friends. Since this is a public, not a public, a private event, as the school governing body and the Western Cape Department have pointed out, this is not an official school event. So if this is just a private organization, a private event, this could just suggest that many of the people who were just invited, which there were 77 of them, as over here somewhere. Oh boy. Yeah, here. The 77 guests on the scene plan, that this wasn't a huge amount of people. And since we do know that there are 170 matriculants in the school, meaning that a lot of them didn't intend, meaning that it may suggest it wasn't really racial in nature and could have been just simply that most of the people who were there were just friends with each other and just wanted to go out with each other. That's not uncommon to hear of. But something that this article does point out is this. Right at the very end, okay. As it says the amount of matriculants here, they do ask and say, why have none of the 170 whites been friends with the 50 and the 34 black matriculants? Why is it the fact that none of them got along or were friends or just wanted to just let them hang out? That does seem odd. And also, what is another odd thing is, why wasn't the WhatsApp sent to everyone. Because if this was a matric ball, a matric farewell, which this article suggests, why would they not want all of the matrics to celebrate in this? Because if this was to give the matrics a nice end of the year send off, why would not everyone be invited instead of just a few people who were invited? If this was just a private event that a parent and a few people just made, then this would be fine. But if this was to specifically give the matrix a send off for the year, then why would not everyone be invited? This does raise some suspicions around it. But since we may have suggested this white matric ball may be racist in nature, we need more evidence than that. We can't simply just suggest that this is that and not have anything else. We may need to have more evidence. What about, let's say, if we can prove that the school itself was racist in nature, then that could inherently bring about that this ball may also be racist in nature. So we have here from the IOL, these racist incidents have been building up, says Brackenfell High School matric pupil. So a matric learner who can be made a concern over safety said that the school should have been aware about how the private event would have come across to learners of color who were not invited to the party other than some being privy to the second-hand invitation that circulated on the WhatsApp 2 days before the masquerade ball. So it feels like to many of these people that they felt like they weren't really invited, and that when these invites were sent, it was sent on very short notice, and they didn't really have any time to prepare. The reasons why this is such a hard thing for us to swallow is because these racist incidents have been building up. There are many instances that I can share where learners of color were outright treated unfairly. We are not even surprised that the school is denying the involvement because this is their go-to for everything they deny and sweep it under the rug. So this does suggest that it may be racist in nature, because if many of these people who felt like that they were being treated unfairly during the school, that this ball may also be an indication that these people were, not really wanted to attend. And it continues here. It was not a white-only party, and a number of children of color attended. The school is not racist and does not deserve to go through so much unnecessary drama because the parents felt a certain way. The EFF opportunistic and needs to stop blowing out things proportions. So, as it suggests here, maybe the COVID-19 regulations had an influence over this party. Maybe the people who were invited, the colored people, as it suggests, and if this is true, then it's not racist in nature, it seems like. That means the colored people just didn't choose to attend the ball because out of fear that they would get COVID-19, get sick, medical debt, a whole list of issues that people don't want to have. And that the EFF, which I do agree is very opportunistic many times and does have a lot of things I do disagree with them in their approach to how they handle the situation, does seem to suggest that it's like this. Will be laying challenges against all those who, inside the situation, it is uncalled for ridiculous and disruptive, especially at such a time as this. We have video proof of what happened that day, and we will not be intimidated by the EFF. So, it does seem like there's a lot of things that are mounting that suggest that this was not a racist event. If this is true that colored people were invented but rejected it due to fears of COVID-19, and also because of the expenses, it seems that they would, be fine with it. So we may need to prove it some other ways. Let's say we have this one, which says Brackenfell people speak out on the school racism. a person has said over here that there were countless complaints that were brought to the school's attention, but they didn't do anything about it when they spoke about racism. And then a former rugby player has stated that her sister, when she was in there, has experienced racism, and when a student called her the K word, they were only suspended for 2 days. Now, the reason why the K word is such a violent thing is because it has a whole long line of history that does conjure up images and history. People know what the word means, and people knows what's the effect the word has. So it does seem like that there was at least leniency on the student who called her the K word, which does suggest at least some sort of racism. And he ends off by saying that when he matriculated in 2016, uh, and in he was experiencing racism, and in 2020 they were still experiencing racism. Again, the Western Cape Education Department says it's spoken to the school and pupils to ensure that these experiences of discrimination were to be heard. So it does seem like they're at least having an effort, but it doesn't seem like their efforts are too well. Now, we have a few pieces of evidence. Let's just go for one more thing. This is the one that I think inherently at least says that the school does have a racism problem, but may not be able to handle this in the correct situation, or maybe not taking it too seriously to the gravity that it may is that it has. So many of the students, when Black Lives Matter happened, many of the students over here went to share their own stories of feeling discriminated against. Many pupils who also can be named nature. This is the same one that we discussed over here, so we don't have to go through that one again. But we can go through some of these Instagram posts. In June, we, the past and the present students of Brackenfell High School, formulated submitted formal memorandum addressing our experiences. So, and then they detail a bit more. There was a day at school when I didn't have a tie on because I lost mine a few days before. So Mr. Miller came to me and asked where it was. So I explained that I lost it. And he said to me, just tell your mom and dad to stop drinking for a week or so and they'll afford a tie. It's not that expensive. I told my mom about the matter and she came to the school to speak to the principal. This was offensive for the fact that he thought I could come to a school that requires 20,000 plus on school fees, but I can't afford a tie. Second of all, making the assumption that my parents drink away their money just isn't right. We know these assumptions wouldn't have been made towards a white student at the school. Now, again, this does seem a bit weird for this person to not only accuse them for not being able to afford a tie, but that their parents are drunkards, even though it's suggested, at least by her, that they're not, and that they can't just go to 20,000 rand school, and not be able to afford a tie. That would be a pretty bit odd of turn of events. One more. The school claims that the SGB controls everything that the school goes on in the school, which I don't understand how, because why would we have a principal if he does nothing? Which actually he doesn't do much, especially in issues that involve racism. A lot of this Instagram posts do reveal a lot of specific things. Now, what does this leave us to conclude after all these articles we've been through and all these things that we've seen? What does this, us, the observer, who doesn't know too much of the situation, lead to? These specific conclusions. One, that it does seem like that the high school does have racist elements from black and colored people feeling like they're not really secure, have been called many racial slurs, and have been felt like that they were excluded from this event specifically, and that it may be, at least to them, indication of discrimination that the school hasn't resolved and keeps ignoring. But we can still find out that this this ball did have a number of colored attendants. So this means that this matric ball specifically may not have been racially in nature charged, but was simply just not too open about it, because it does seem like it was a private event, and it does seem like it was intending to specifically be a couple of parents wanting to give their kids just a few a nice evening to just have a good time, experience fun, and just have a great send off for the matric year, especially after the COVID-19 incidents that happened this year. It seems like this specific matric ball was not racial in nature. That can be said as a proven fact. Now, does this mean that the school doesn't have a racist problem? Certainly no. The school does have a racist problem. From all these articles suggesting that at least there is some element of racism being experienced here. Now, that has been answered. There is another question that still needs to be answered as well. The EFF. The EFF have made a terrible, terrible showing of this. Why would they come to this protest on a short notice and just start causing so much trouble? This doesn't make sense, and this makes them just look even worse. This doesn't make the EFF look like proud freedom fighters who are stopping racism as they did before in many during apartheid. This just makes them look like crazed maniacs just looking for a fight and wanting to increase their own political agenda. This does not look good at all. Even if the EFF were correct on the fact that the matric ball was racist in nature, they are not correct on the fact that they did in such a violent manner. We can go through some of the things that they did. First, we must go through this. The South African Human Rights Commission Community Protest Pamphlet. This is basically just speaking about what are the ways protests can be done and how they should be done, how they should be conducted. So we can see through here. Yeah, over here. Oh wait, yeah, over here. Yeah, I was right here. Okay, so Section 3.2 of the Regulations Gatherings Act provides that the conveyor shall no later than 7 days before the date on which the gathering is to be held give notice of the gathering to be a responsible officer concerned, provided that it is not responsible for the conveyor to give such notice earlier than 7 days before such a date. He will give notice at the earliest opportunity provided. Further, if such a notice is given less than 48 hours before the commencement of the gathering, the responsible officer may be noticed the conveyor prohibit the gathering. This does suggest that the EFF has at least had an illegal gathering to this because they didn't give 7 days notice and that they were extremely violent in this. We are given a right to have a peaceful protest, not a violent protest. The conveyor, again, we can sort of sometimes like the conveyor who they are. It's a person who's organizing and whatnot. And the rest of this is just speaking in detail on how protests should be handled, what are they responsible for, what can they strike about, and the role of the South African Commission. This is very interesting. One I think people should read and whatnot. So they have been taken to court. They actually have been taken to court, as we can see from here. Brackenfell High versus EFF. Judge Siri defends the right to protest. Now, this specific one is extremely long. I'm not going to read all of it, but basic gist of this is that they do defend the right for him, for the EFF to protest, but they specifically have criteria saying that they should have not have done it in such a way, that they did it in a manner that disrupted the school, but that their fundamental right to protest was protected. So they didn't really face any legal actions. So we've answered a couple of, we have answered the questions that we set out to here, the two questions. One, is Brackenfell High School racist in nature? Was the matric ball racist? Not really. We've seen that at least some colored people were invited, which does indicate that it wasn't racist in nature. Can it feel like it was exclusionary? Definitely. But it does seem like this was just a private event that was held by a specific group, and that they did invite other people out there, but they refused due to COVID-19 reasons. But is the school itself racist? Most certainly. We have gone through many of these things that these people have swept under the rug and that they have not addressed properly. And we've answered the question of the EFF and were they here legally or were they here illegally, and what was that? They were defending their rights were defended in a court of law, and so there's nothing much we can do about there. But I hope this was at least informative and at least somewhat entertaining, and I do hope this was in some way useful to you in guiding you through the situation that has been extremely confusing and all mismatch of what was happening. Thank you for viewing. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.